If you're a bivocational pastor in a small church, the demands from the church may not be as great, but if you've got two jobs, that can make up the difference. So it's always a matter of priorities, of making sure that you spend proper time in every area of your life.
Well, it's time for another Pastor's Forum. I'm Byron Tyler. Glad you could stop by. Last week, we got together with Pastor Steve Jacobson of the Emmanuel Baptist Church in Marion, Arkansas. Steve, it's so good to have you back this week.
Wonderful to be here, Byron.
We used to work together.
Yes, indeed.
Right here with WCRV when it was at Poplar and Mendenhall on top of the First Tennessee Bank building on the fourth floor there.
And the great part about that was when I messed up my checking account, there was somebody right downstairs who could straighten it out for me.
Of course, it was next to that Houston's restaurant. We could have that nice aroma.
And there was the train that used to run by there that kind of shook the walls when we were doing Mid-South Viewpoint.
You're right. That used to actually rattle the building when the train went by.
It was interesting.
It was interesting.
I can remember a few Mid-South Viewpoints where they'd have to stop the tape and start over again.
Those days are behind, thankfully, for that. I was looking at your business card here. It says, leading people to walk with God. And I was just thinking about that. Last night, sometimes, you get older, you don't always sleep a complete 8 hours or whatever. You have to wake up several times during the night.
And we won't go into all the details on that.
Last night, for example, I woke up, but sometimes I have some of my greatest fellowship with the Lord in prayer during those times. And it used to frustrate me because I said, I need my sleep. But now I just started just kind of relaxing and thinking about the Lord, praying, and asking God, who can I pray for? But he just started reminding me last night. I was just thinking about the things, he asked Peter to walk out on the water. The Red Sea was parted. And I started thinking, that is the God you serve. The God who did those miracles is alive in you, Byron.
And the other advantage to that, the Bible says he giveth his beloved sleep. And a lot of times you wake up in the middle of the night and you might toss and turn, but you get your heart and mind focused on God and close out all of the other chaos of life, and you'd be amazed how quickly God can give you that sleep again.
That's a great point, because just reflecting on his greatness, reflecting on the miracles, and just reflecting what a personal God he is to me and what he does in my life. Before you knew it, I was sound asleep, and then the alarm goes off. It's time to get up, shoot the alarm.
You can fall asleep without even listening to a tape of one of my sermons.
That's right. But going back to that point, though, Steve, leading people to walk with God, obviously as a pastor, we expect you guys to do that for us, but we have a responsibility too. To not only to hear you preach the Word on Sunday mornings and maybe teach the Word in a Bible study, but we have our own responsibility in this relationship with God, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. And, that's my job, is to help folks get to the point in their own Christian lives where they are not only being discipled, but they become disciplers themselves. To not just take it all in and store it like a big file cabinet, but to to really get a passion for serving the Lord. Whether you're a ditch digger, or a school teacher, work in a drugstore, a supermarket, wherever you are, we are missionaries. That's first and foremost. That's what we are.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we forget that. We kind of have a tendency to get into a routine of church life and all the activities and everything, and we forget that walk. It is a walk, it's left, right, left, and it's just, doing life with God.
Well, and it's not only that. When you're going about your daily life, we talk about sports with friends, we talk about grandkids or kids, or, ladies giving out recipes, or talking about, we talk about a lot of things, and sometimes we forget that those are tremendous opportunities to share the gospel, to plant a seed of the gospel in someone's life. And sometimes, what I hope to be able to do is to get our folks to, if they do talk about this week's high school or college football game and walk away without ever saying anything about the gospel, that they feel bad that they missed an opportunity.
I drive by Marion on 55 on my way to Jonesboro or, northeast Arkansas.
Well, you're going to have to stop in because we're a lot closer than Jonesboro.
In the growth of this community, since, of course, I've been in this area all my life, but just watching the development, new commerce and stuff. Tell me about the community there in Marion.
Well, Marion is a terrific community. I've always Mary Lee and I have lived in Memphis, and we live in Bartlett. And like you, we've driven by on our way, and we see Marion. And I was always impressed with Marion because it's of course one of those bedroom communities. A lot of people travel. A lot of the nurses that Mary Lee works with drive in from Marion. And I was just really impressed with the community as we drove around and got a look at it. I mean, there's some absolutely gorgeous homes. It's a great place to raise a family. And Mary Lee and I are firmly ensconced in Bartlett. And I told her, I said, the next time I move, I want it to be preceded by the sound of a trumpet. But if God were to, bring the circumstances around, Marion would be a great place to move to. But I'm just thrilled that He's placed us there to minister and to reach out to the people in the community there.
Steve, every time I'm around you, you're an up kind of guy. You're always encouraging. You always have a smile. You always have a little joke or sense of humor to have fun with. But you can be a serious guy too. But I don't know if I've ever talked to you about the valleys you've gone through or the times when you are down. Do you ever get depressed?
Oh goodness, there was about I won't mention the name of the church that I was at for about a year, and it was one of those situations where pastors say, "Thank you, Lord, for delivering me from that," and I did some work as a security guard. While I was waiting for God to open another door. And that in the meantime, He opened the door at Jointer, which was a part-time church, so I kept the job as a security guard. So I was pastoring and being a security guard, and I did that for about 3 years. And I have a great deal of sympathy for folks who are security guards because I've learned what a boring job that is. And, and it's rough when you feel a call to the ministry and you just really believe that's where you need to be, and God has not yet opened the next door. It's very easy to get frustrated. It's very easy to begin to question, why me, Lord? But, I saw a quote by Moody the other day. Moses spent 40 years thinking he was a somebody, then 40 years learning that he was a nobody, and then finding out what God could do in the next 40 years with somebody who realized he was a nobody.
Wow.
And so, sometimes we just need to wait on God and realize that, Abraham was 125 years old when he had a child. And I know Mary Lee is hoping and praying that doesn't happen to us. But sometimes the most difficult times are waiting on God, but we just have to do it.
Too, we're talking about profession. We live in a society, especially as Americans, that we gauge each other by, well, what do you do? What do you, instead of our identity, which, as a Christian, obviously, is in Jesus Christ, we have a tendency to find our image and who we are in our profession, but when that profession changes or things happen, we lose that profession.
Well, especially for we men, that's where that's where we get our identity, and it can be very difficult if you go through a period in your professional career where you feel like you're either not going forward or actually moving backwards.
Okay, now you mentioned bivocational pastor on last week's Pastors Forum. Right now, as you're at Emmanuel Baptist, are you doing bivocational?
Yes, it's what we call bivocational or part-time pastorate. And I know that as God gives me life and breath and energy and allows me to keep pastoring, I'm looking forward to the day when we have grown that church to a point where the folks will say, it's time we made you full-time.
Yeah. Well, Steve, we were talking last week about this, the majority of churches are probably under 100 members anyway. Of course, we see these mega churches on the corners, but, in reality, those are the far and few between.
Most Southern
ministries.
Baptist churches are small.
Yeah, thinking about that, thinking about a smaller body, because, God says we're two or more are gathered in my name, so it doesn't take a big population of people to see great things happen. Jesus started out with 12, didn't He?
Well, if you've ever been through experiencing God, Henry Blackaby talks about some churches, particularly in Canada, that never grew to the size of a mega church, but God used them in an extraordinary way to plant churches and to reach groups that were not being reached. So, He used 12 apostles to turn the world upside down.
having to juggle, the ministry responsibilities plus, another job responsibilities. What are some lessons you've learned in the process of trying to balance all this out,
Well, it can be difficult, and you've got to keep in mind that just because you're pastoring doesn't mean you can shortcut. If you have a secular job, you have a responsibility to your secular employer, and then if you've got a family, you've got to be, you've got to make sure that you are, taking care of your family as well. So I don't suppose there is an easy course, an easy direction, because if you're a full-time pastor in a larger in a church of any size, the demands on your time are tremendous. If you're a bivocational pastor in a small church, the demands from the church may not be as great, but if you've got two jobs, that can make up the difference. So it's always a matter of priorities, of making sure that you spend proper time in every area of your life.
Yeah. How are you challenged personally in your own spiritual walk and your journey? I mean, you have to make sure, I'm sure as a pastor, that, you're spending time in prayer, not just for your people, but just for your own personal, walk with Christ.
Absolutely. And adding to our issues, of course, my wife's mother lives with us. We're caring for her. And so there are a lot of demands, and it's very easy. I don't want to say you forget that you are a pastor, but it's sometimes easy to become so focused on the nasty now and now that you forget the sweet by and by.
Yeah.
And so it just, every day is just a challenge to remember whose you are and what ultimately what your responsibilities are in any given situation.
Yeah. Knowing that humor is an important part of your life and you like to, to have fun. What's the funniest thing that's happened to you since you've been in the ministry?
Oh, goodness. Wow. Boy, you dropped that on me all of a sudden. There have been many of them, and I'm not sure I could think of one. It was a prank that I pulled on my church in Joyner. I guess I have people who know me know that I have a very warped sense of humor. Okay, you never know what's going to happen next. We were up in Joyner, and it was April 1st. And I just knew somebody was going to say something about it. Nobody did. We went through Bible study, and nobody mentioned the fact that it was April 1st. And I thought, this is great. This is a perfect setup. So I got up to make the morning announcements, and I said, folks, I need to share something with you. I said, Mary Lee and I have accepted the call to a church up in New Jersey, close to where my family lives, and we're going to be headed up that way. And I've told you that to say this. April Fools. And what's funny is that Mary Lee didn't know I was going to do this. So the choir is sitting behind me, and they see this look of astonishment on her face sitting in the pews. Now the choir realizes something's coming because Mary Lee look like she looks like she has no idea what's coming. And one of my church members, as they were walking out, said, "Brother Steve, that was not even funny." But it got a lot of laughs when I pulled it on them.
It's great that you can have fun with your people,
Oh, yeah.
And be transparent. Do you have some confidence in the ministry that you, when you have a heavy heart or burden, because I know that it gets heavy sometimes, you get, things weigh you down, that you can go to and you can get encouragement from yourself? Well,
when you're the pastor of a small church, unless you've got some, friends who are pastors that you can call on. And I'm fortunate having graduated from Mid-America Seminary. I had some wonderful professors, and still got some great friends who are still teaching there. And I can, if need be, I can always drop by and sit down and have a chat. It's true that being a pastor can be very lonely because you really can't get as close. You can't get close to someone in the congregation like you would a fellow pastor, because there's no way that somebody even as close to you as they are can understand the stresses and all of the issues involved in ministry like another pastor.
Yeah.
And so it's good to develop that friendship with a brother. You can just sit down and say, "Hey man, I'm struggling with this," and he'll understand why.
Give us some landmarks where the church is located, of course, in Marion, Arkansas, of course, but how can we find you?
Well, the easiest way, I guess, is to get off as you head up 55 north toward the Jonesboro exit. You come to exit number 10, which is the first Marion exit. You just get off there, make a right turn at the traffic light, which takes you right through the middle of downtown Marion, past City Hall, where my oldest son paid a couple of speeding tickets over the course of years, and the United Methodist Church, which is on the corner. And then you make a right turn on Highway 77. and you just follow it around the bend. Like I say, you'll pass the big First Baptist Church on your right, and please, I love those folks, but we want you to come to Emmanuel, so please pass them and come on down the street about a quarter of a mile to us. We're at 1714 Highway 77.
Steve, give us that web address, too, because there's a lot of great information. Of course, those sermon outlines I mentioned, too.
Right, and we try to keep up with, different activities that are happening in the church so that, everybody knows what's going on. The website is Emmanuel, IMMANUEL, BC.org.
Steve, it's been great to catch up with you these past 2 weeks. Thank you so much.
Well, Byron, you are more than welcome. It was a thrill to hear from you and get an opportunity to not only to renew a friendship, but to get to talk about our church. I'm excited about the church. I'm excited about what God is doing. And we are really looking forward to God doing some great things in our midst here in 2016.
What do you want a first-time visitor to experience when they walk in the door?
Well, I can tell you what some of the visitors who have visited have said to me, that they were just overwhelmed with the friendliness of the church. And that's one thing we try to do. We want you, if you come as a visitor to our church, to feel like you're a longtime member, to feel like you are like you've come, like you're not a visitor, you're a member of the family.
I like that. Steve, thanks so much. Friends, that's all the time we have on this week's Pastor's Forum. Steve Jacobson, pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church these past 2 Sundays. Thank you for stopping by. Keep Steve in your prayers in that ministry, too, as they reach out in their community. I'm Byron Tyler. That's all the time we have right now. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.